on this episode of The Strange Medicine of Alice Strange. I think it's nice to have people who share your truth, but I find it so much more rewarding when other people can look at you and say, I don't think that's true at all for me, but go you, like you, that is great for you. What a more genuine feeling of compassion and caring to say, I do not agree, but I still fully accept you.
How you breathe shapes the state of your experience, right? It shapes the state of your connection and being.
But I believe that the breath is so sacred. The breath is like connecting us with everything that is outside of us. It's the same breath our ancestors breathed. It's been recycled by plants and trees back and forth between, and how beautiful is that?
That pause is like so critical and dreaded by most people. It's like they think they have to figure it out. They think they have to do the next thing. And it's just like, and you can see my hands, it's like, it's very, it pulls you up and out of your body as opposed to just pause. Just like we take for granted our body. It's like, this is the device that allows us to have an experience on this planet. And it's the only thing that every human being shares that is in common. We all have a body.
And I say, hey, breathe for a sec. And they just do. And they're like, oh, okay. And then so what's the truth? What do you need to know? I don't know. Take another breath. And it's so simple, but I think when you try it for the first time, it's really revolutionary.
I use that fire and intensity to create a different reality. So I have conversations with women because I believe that women in conversation transform the world. In that nanosecond of awakening, life transforms. So how else might we choose to create a reality, right? Because we are creators. If I am quantum, I am the creator.
I was working at the suicide hotline while I was dealing with the worst mental health of my life. It was really just like focusing on everybody else so I could ignore my own truth.
I get it. I get it. The need to save, right? To save somebody from themselves when what we're really looking for is to save ourselves.
It is the mentality of I can't save myself, but maybe I can do it for somebody else.
So if you want to decode the story, if you want to know the story of your body so that you can take ownership of that and then redirect and make different choices, then the next step is you listen to your body.
Welcome, seekers, to The Strange Medicine of Alice Strange, the podcast where modern science meets with what lies beyond what we can see. Here, we delve into psychology, spirituality, science, and the occult. Each episode will explore the bigger questions of existence, the nature of the soul, our internal world, and how we can understand them through spirituality and magic. This podcast is a sanctuary for the soul. Alongside science and spirituality, we also learn the power of compassion and the magic of extending kindness to others. For in the act of giving, we receive. In the act of teaching, we learn. This is a journey into the depths of the mind as well as the heart, where every lesson is a step toward oneness, every insight a bridge to understanding, and every act of kindness a spell that transforms the world. So join me, Alice Autumn Strange, on this journey of self-discovery, scientific wonders, ancient knowledge, and finding the strange medicine within yourself. Hello, seekers. I am Alice Estrella Strange, and I am so excited to share with you today. Today, we are talking to Stela Murrizi. Stela creates and facilitates experiences for personal discovery and exploration. A deeply caring and compassionate woman who is equally ferocious and courageous, Stela thrives in the deep conversation that reveals the complexity of our humanity and allows us to reclaim sovereignty in our lives. Because she has lived through immense darkness and alchemized the pain into joy, she knows well what it takes to stand with you, unafraid, as you face your own deepest, darkest secrets. Stela's work revolves around the well system's way of life because it is the framework for evolution and propels her to be successful in choosing to move away from drugs, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts and behavioral disorders to become the powerful presence she is today. Stela's passion for living is matched with her compassion for those who desire to awaken to a more meaningful life. In this episode, we'll talk about truth, paradigm shifting, overcoming BPD, bipolar, and other mental and physical dis-ease, and the importance of the breath and creating your own reality, as well as discovering some striking similarities in our personal stories. And Stela has generously offered free resources to each listener, and the links for Slow Down to Accelerate Your Evolution e-course and the Decloaking the Living Authentically audio files, where the journey to integrating that process begins, are in the description wherever you are watching or listening. And if you don't know me, I'm Alice. I am a coach for psychic development and self-development. I help others overcome their limitations to become the self they desire to be. And be it self-doubt or disconnection or mental illness, I believe everyone is capable of healing. I currently have some opportunities for coaching available, so check out my links in the description if you're interested in that. And if you haven't heard about the spiritual community I host on Patreon, it is free and there are events going on all the time. So if you'd like to hang out with me or connect with aligned people, go check that out. And I also have a comprehensive guide to building relationships with plant spirits called Natural Allies that will be released on October 1st, and it is now available for pre-order. It is a detailed step-by-step process that I use myself in my own practice. And I'm so excited to share this wisdom about something I am truly passionate about. To learn more about what this guide includes or to pre-order, the links are down below. And if you like spirituality, psychology, self-development, and learning, be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss anything. Take care, love yourself, and remember, you don't have to do it alone. Hello and welcome, Stela Murrizi. I am so happy to have you on here, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Alice. I love to be here and explore where we're going to go.
Lovely. And so would you mind giving yourself a little introduction to everyone and kind of explaining who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So my name's Stela Murrizi, and my chosen path is to be a code model coach, which is a creation out of deep energy coach. So the fundamentals of that are basically to help women discover a process that allows them to live the life that they know they're meant to live. So there's a reliable, replicable, repeatable process that I discovered, and now I teach women. And through that process, I discovered not only my own inhibiting patterns, but also what's happening on a larger scale. And simultaneously, it helped me expand my context for what I am as a human being. And now science is showcasing that over and over and over. So that's the glimpse of what I do. And,
I love that. We talk so much about science meeting with, everything, spirituality and psychology on this podcast. And that's why I'm just so excited to have you here. And I also love to kind of dive into people's stories and how they got to be here. So would you share a little bit about how you got to be here?
Oh, wow. Okay, sure. So, where do you start? So I have now had enough experience with other people who open up to the conversations, like that are willing to actually have those conversations, to discover that my story is not unlike most people's. In fact, it's the quote unquote normal as opposed to the abomination. But I grew up believing that what was happening to me was mine and everybody else was somehow, different and better and all that sort of stuff. So, long story short, I grew up in communist Albania. My parents, both sides, were politically persecuted. So, intergenerational trauma moved through my mother's body when she was pregnant, and thereafter until we actually left Albania and escaped into Greece and then came to Canada. And throughout this whole time, there was a lot of seeking to control, right? My parents were seeking to manage their reality and therefore control their children, which that's just how it is. In my adult life, I did the good girl thing. I went to school, I got a master's degree in criminology, I worked for the federal government, and I was with a man that I'm currently married to and adore him. And I found myself in the middle of a federal government going back to using drugs. So I had a phase, good girl gone bad phase. And I started using drugs and all that sort of stuff that goes with that phase. But this was different. There was a moment in there where I thought, I'm doing everything by the book, right? I'm going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings. I'm going to therapy. I'm going to Buddhist gatherings. I'm going to retreats. I'm doing everything by the book and I'm dying, right? Inside myself, I am dying. What is going on? And so, as one does with these things, I stumbled upon a woman who was actually teaching what the Well Systems Institute now, and for 30 years has been teaching women. And when I found her, I thought, there's something different here, and I don't know what it is, but I want it. So I gave myself permission to pursue that line of inquiry and to show up to her conversations. And even the $20 that she was asking for a conversation, I was like, one more time, if I just get like royally screwed, to be polite, one more time. But I trusted my instinct and I went for it, and my life transformed completely, entirely in its totality. So,
And you speak a lot on the Well Systems program and things, and I would love. I know it's very deep, very complex. Could you share a little bit about the core of what this is all about?
okay, that's a great question. Thank you for that one. Yeah, I do speak a lot about the well systems. It's a paradigm, so it's an alternative mindset to what people consider themselves to be. So, in the traditional allopathic model of the world, the Newtonian model of the world, there's what you see is what you get. We're the physical body. Where if there's a disease on the body, then we act upon the disease, right? So, if you have cancer, you remove the cancer, all that sort of stuff. In the quantum perspective, which is what the well systems paradigm is based upon and built upon, it's scientific methodology that we apply that's reliant upon the quantum sciences, which have been around for 100 years. It's like, let's catch up already. So, um, okay, so what we learned through this paradigm is that, first of all, we don't know everything that we don't know. And there is a predictable structure to thought. And when you insert choice into that predictable structure of thought, you begin to notice that you can choose from your history and your upbringing, which will give you more of what you got because it's a tiny box, or you can raise your thinking to expand so that you can include more of your intuitive knowings, intuitive sort of, like, you can pick up on things, right? We don't have to like have a formula box, but we can pick up on things, and we got to learn how to trust that. So in the well systems paradigm, we call that signal from self. So you can call it consciousness, you can call it God force, you can call it I don't know, there's lots of different language for it. Quantum, it's but the point is that it's the field of all possibility and all of everything that ever existed and will exist simultaneously moving through this device. So we believe the body is a quantum biological device that processes information. So as that information moves through the body can calibrate for it very fast. Our intellect cannot. So if we know how to stay with that and to discover from that, then we are far more attuned to a deep inner truth that then can guide us in our path. So there's a few, it's about decoding the messages of the body because it's through the body that we get the information. So it's clearing the path and clearing the path. Mhm.
Beautiful. And this Well Systems, you went through it yourself and found a lot of benefit from it. And now, if I'm correct, you use this to help other people, right?
Yes, exactly. Because it's a mindset, right? Because it's a paradigm, what ends up happening is you either adopt it or you don't. So for me, I didn't know what I would get into, but it started to make sense of, my addiction tendencies. So in Narcotics Anonymous, I would go in and I would say, I'm Stella and I am an addict. And for more than 6 months, I was so angry about that because who I am is not an addict. I am using the strategy of addiction to cope with my pain. Sure, I'm willing to admit that. But who I am as a human being is not an addict. And so I found myself one time going in and I said, Hi, I'm Stella and I'm not an addict. And the look around the room of all the women was like, oh, the audacity. So I knew it wasn't for me. And when I discovered that, in fact, I'm not an addict, I am the God force manifesting in tissue, I was like, ooh, wait a minute. See, now I have chills. It's like, I choose that one. Let's try that path and see where it takes me. So it really began to make sense of everything that was happening in my life. And it gave me permission to really trust what I know. So discover how to trust what I know. Because gaslighting is a thing and we're all exposed to it. And so we think there's something wrong with us. No, just no.
I love that so much. And I think a lot of people do see that addict label so heavy, so heavy. And especially with addiction, it's something that they kind of, when you're in recovery, they do say, you're an addict, you'll always be an addict. And that's so heartbreaking. And I mean, sure, maybe some people benefit from that, but that's so heartbreaking. And so I know you have spoken a bit before on other things that you've been labeled with that were very heavy. And I'm wondering how those kind of labels are with you now. Do they linger? Do they stick around?
Well, they stick around only when I try to get insurance. And I was denied for life insurance because I have had those diagnoses in my history, and so they consider me a, high risk. I don't know. So I couldn't get insurance in the sort of conventional way, and my husband wants me to. So only in that way. But do I identify as, having bipolar? No. Borderline personality disorder, depression, anxiety, IBS, thyroid. It was like all of these, it's like, bag of pills for me to deal with all of these problems when they're not really problems, they're information. They're seeking to get my attention. And it was not a coincidence that all of these things were starting to come up when I was in an abusive relationship with my ex, right? So 7 years of that is bound to drive anybody crazy. So the medical system was no help to me. In fact, I was treated like incredibly degrading and pejorative, condescending sort of way of, you don't know anything, they're their little girl. Like, you seem like a nice girl, like you shouldn't be going through these things. When I was in the psychiatric ward, suicidal. So, but no, none of those things mean anything to me anymore. It's almost like there was a life back then, and I know about that life, and there was a lot of information that this physical device, this body processed, but it does not linger. The only thing that shows up for me now are my body gives me information through IBS-like symptoms and momentary, just a moment in time when I know something inside of me and it's seeking to get my attention. And I know what to do with that. I know what to do with that because I have a process that I apply on a moment-to-moment basis. So for me, there is nothing that lingers. I'm not on any pills. I'm not on absolutely anything at all.
And I completely relate. I have such a similar story with the BPD and the bipolar and the schizoaffective and the psych wards, and they do look at you like condescendingly, infantilizing, if that's the word. And it's almost as if there's a fear, like a if I were to disrespect you, you'd lose your mind kind of thing. And it's such a difficult place to be. And there is no term for people who recover from things like that. I mean, when I had gone a year, 6 months with zero symptoms, no medication, I think I started doing the Google thing with what does it look like? What is the official remission? And I think the psychology is that remission is when you have such a decrease in symptoms that you can function at like a certain percentage higher rate. There's literally no term for people who stop having bipolar mood swings or stop having hallucinations or the personality, even especially the personality disorders. Those things are considered unfixable.
Lifelong.
Yeah, always. And it's so sad because you do find a lot of people who just find ways. And there's not even just one way. Like everybody has a way. And I think it needs to be said for sure. And so I would love to hear about what you think the real keys to you finding a much better state of being.
So there's one word that came immediately as you asked that, and that is truth. So connection and willingness to hear my own truth. Because what drives us crazy is that we don't want to know what we already know. We don't want to hear what we hear. We don't want to sense what we sense. My parents couldn't possibly. My husband wouldn't. No way. No way is that true. So we drive ourselves crazy in order to make the other people right for abusing us or assaulting us or, manipulating us because there's a spectrum to abuse and it could be as simple as a look and we know that look and that look brings up everything from our childhood that we weren't allowed to all the way to actually physically assaulting someone. So there's a quite a spectrum there. And quite often, people who are on the side of the spectrum that is more mind fucks. Can I swear here? But
Oh
anyway,
yeah, swear all you want.
right? Where it's like that, where it's a mind fuck. And it's like they look over here at the other end of the spectrum and they go, it's not so bad. When the truth of it is that right now they sense that they're being hurt and manipulated and treated as lesser than and are not giving themselves permission to own that. So my whole work, my whole reason d'etre on this planet is to help people reconnect to that deep inner truth because it's secrets and lies, right? Secrets that we tell ourselves, lies that we tell ourselves, secrets that we keep from others, lies that we tell others that keep us enslaved. And it is a prison of our own making that we don't know how to escape because if we're looking outside for help and we're going to the psychiatrists, they have a particular worldview that says it's a lifelong disease. So now you're trapped even more in the label and the story of the quote unquote expert. But what is the truth of your experience, right? They're working with labels and they're working with diagnoses and they're working with predetermined solutions that are not individualized to your unique sense of being. So it further destabilizes us and it further disconnects us. So the people that I work with have been through all of this, have tried all of this, and then they go, man, there's got to be more, right? There's got to be something else. And so they're willing to go into the woo woo, into the little bit seemingly crazy that isn't, right? It's the only sane, it's a fundamentally sane space to be. And it's one that does not often get acknowledged as such, right? Because when I go to I don't know, I'm going to pick on my mother. This is not true, but someone's mother, and they say, look, our body is a quantum biological device. They go, wait, what? Here, take your pills and don't be ridiculous. Do as the doctor says or else. So we really have to discover a different platform to stand on that is based on our own internal truth and trusting that internal truth because it never, ever, ever leads us astray, right? It's when we don't listen, that's when we get into trouble. So it's connection to the truth that is the fundamental basis for building upon a life that's meaningful.
When you said truth, I just got chills. I resonate with that so deeply. I think the things I think about are spirituality, because that is finding a different set of truth. I think about authenticity. Authenticity, because that's your truth of who you are. And I also think about community, people who share that truth and can support you in finding even more truth. I think that's such a good word to just really bring it all together.
Absolutely, yes. Yes to all of that. And one thing I'd like to add is so from my perspective, I don't have to share the same truth as you in order for us to be in community, right? However, what I share with you is a process that invites and compels you to live your truth and me to live my truth. And then we meet and we converse from that space of acknowledgement in difference, right? So you get to have your truth and it's 100% real for you. And you get to change your mind when an alternative truth presents and becomes larger than the one that you currently have. And so it is a process of perpetual expansion of truth.
Yes. I think it's nice to have people who share your truth, but I find it so much more rewarding when other people can look at you and say, "I don't think that's true at all for me, but go you like you that is great for you." And what a what a more genuine feeling of compassion and caring to say, "I do not agree, but I still fully accept you." And that's such a beautiful thing. And I think a lot of people get uncomfortable when we talk about like relative reality. Reality changes person to person, but unfortunately, that's kind of it is the reality of things. And sometimes truth is uncomfortable.
Most of the time.
I agree. I agree. And so, how you mentioned generational trauma being passed down. Are there other things in your experience that do lead to this abandoning of truth, this dysregulation within the person?
So help me understand what you mean by other things. So just,
Such as physical or mental, emotional, behavioral type symptoms that would get diagnoses that really have other things underlying.
well, so from my perspective, and this is it's going to sound black and white because it feels like that. I either am or I am not quantum. So you and I have got to make a choice at some point what we believe. And we can continue to believe the conventional story of Newtonian and Darwinism and, survival of the fittest. And there is a truth and this is it. And we'll tell you what it is, a top-down imposition of truth. Or we've got to make a choice that we are quantum. So now that word in and of itself opens up immense potential and possibility, and it opens up the door for paradox, right? Because in that nanosecond, I am now both particle and wave and the observer directing the direction of where my life is going to go next, right? The singular choice leads to this here, and then it opens up the door for far more choices. And then I go here, and then that opens up the door to far more choices. And so I've got to make that choice. So, where do I want to stand as a platform for evolution? And the whole world, quite literally, the whole world that we live in, and it is getting worse, it is getting denser. The pressure to comply with a conventional narrative is getting denser. So, people are forced into compliance, even through shaming, never mind actually quite more invasive tactics. And so that's going to drive people crazy. And then they're going to go back to the people that they know and they're going to seek solutions that they know. And so that's going to get passed on. So we know from epigenetics that before you're even born, the energetic framework that's required for you to survive or thrive in this world lives in the genetic makeup, and it's passed to you through the markers of your father's body and your mother's body, and then it gets um, it grows up in the womb, right? It's nurtured in the womb, and then it gets passed along when you're born and raised. So every one of these things, and I have a 4-year-old son, and I've seen this happen, right? Everywhere, children are easily manipulatable. Why? Because they're like sponges. So they take in the world as you tell them it is. And so if you tell them that there is a truth and this is it, and be afraid of change because change means trouble, we grow up to believe that. And it's it's incongruent with the truth of the quantum world, which I believe is the truth. And so if it's incongruent, we're going to manifest all kinds of problems, all kinds of diseases, because we're going to seek to not be in alignment with our own truth. And we're going to seek to be in compliance with someone else's. And that is crazy making stuff for everybody.
I love that answer so much. That's so deep, so thorough. I think I'll have to chew on that for a while, but that deeply resonates. And yeah, everything I ever think about that leads to these things does fall into that category. And so with this quantum, with this how it affects the mind, body, spirit, if you could put out one piece of information that you really think everybody should know about integrating this for their wellness, what would you share?
So maybe I'll start with a fundamental, and that is to breathe. The vast majority of my work is helping women breathe, because um, they discover they stumble they discover a moment of truth, right? So there's a conversation, and they'll tell whatever they're telling, and then they'll discover a moment of, and they don't want to go there, and immediately they stop breathing. So when you stop breathing, your body cannot process, because your body is not able to bring in life force and to process what it's designed to process. So my job is to help them breathe and to help them redirect their attention to the base of their spine, so at the bottom of their coccyx. So it's really deep. And it's interesting, because with the last woman, first call we ever had, and within 2 breaths, she's like, wow, what is this? 2 breaths. And I said, you know what? This is what it means to live from the depths of your being, right? Just be connected to something that is far deeper than someone else's story, because someone else's story shallows your breath. And like, we stop breathing to hear, or we hold, right? It's like inhale and hold, brace. Oh man, I'm gonna have to fight somebody. Or exhale and hold, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna disappear, and I'm just gonna go into my room and hide. So how you breathe shapes the state of your experience, right? It shapes the state of your connection and being. And so breathe to the base of your spine and keep that breath in flow. So like a water breath, where it's a perpetual inhale and exhale, so that there's no stopping. And then just let your body do what your body is designed to do without the stories, and notice what the stories are, because there's different things playing out here. So that would be it.
I love that so much. I truly think, and it sounds dramatic, but I believe that the breath is so sacred. There the breath is like connecting us with everything that is outside of us. It's the same breath our ancestors breathed. It's been recycled by plants and trees back and forth between, and how beautiful is that? And I think I really started working with the breath probably at like 12 or 13 years old. And it was just kind of intuitive, kind of led by random things found online. And I found a real peace in focusing on the breath. And I just love that perspective. I think that's so special. I teach that to my clients all the time about the breath and how important it is. I think you can really tell a lot about yourself when you pause and really check in with your breath and what it's doing.
Yes. Yes, thank you for that. That pause is like so critical and dreaded by most people. It's like they think they have to figure it out. They think they have to do the next thing. And it's just like, and you can see my hands, it's like, it's very, it pulls you up and out of your body, as opposed to just pause and like redirect inward. And in the nanosecond that you do that, you're going to have stuff move, right? So now there's going to be potentially tears, and then you have rules around tears, but your body is doing what your body needs to do. So, we really have to find a different way to connect to our bodies in order to become that which we seek to become. So breath is critical and breath is sacred. Like we take it for granted, just like we take for granted our body. It's like this is the device that allows us to have an experience on this planet. And it's the only thing that every human being shares that is in common. We all have a body. It's necessary.
Absolutely. And I think more than anything, when I'm talking to not even just my clients, but my friends, they're starting to get a little agitated. I'm the kind of person everybody feels safe with me. So if they're stressed, they'll give me a phone call and I say, hey, 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 breathe for a sec. And they just do. And they're like, oh, okay. And then so what's the truth? What do you need to know? I don't know. Take another breath. And it's
Mm,
so simple. But I think when you try it for the first time, it's really revolutionary. It really changes things. And it can be hard to remind yourself sometimes. It takes practice and habits to remember to breathe.
I want to share with you something here
Oh,
because
please do.
what happened for me was that I was 18 years old, I guess, first year university, and I discovered yoga. And at the same time, I discovered marijuana. So I coupled the two. So my permission to breathe became smoking weed and yoga. So, but they became intertwined. And so I spent the next decade not knowing how to breathe without, or how to deeply inhale or exhale without actually consuming the substance called weed, because up until then, I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what that's like. I was in a go, go, go mode, right? So
Right.
and what happened is I coupled these two together. And then when I stopped smoking weed, it was like, oh, now what? I don't know what to do now.
And I think things like that for some people can be helpful. But it's careful, you're being mindful. I think I am a proponent of what I call training wheels. Allow yourself the tools necessary to build the skill to where you don't need the tools anymore. I think trying to jump into level 10 from level 1 is a little unrealistic and discouraging for some people, but again, with things like that, I think that is a good like word of caution. Just carefully be mindful of things like that for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I trust my journey to have been exactly what it needed to be for me to be here. So I would not recommend to somebody that they go and do what I did, right? Because there's a shortcut, right? There is a shortcut that's available. And if you're not ready, that shortcut will mean nothing to you, right? If you don't test it out in the ways that your journey needs to take you, what I say does not matter. What you say does not matter because we're not there yet, right? Like that person is not where we are. And so I hear you. And I would encourage people who are looking for an alternative, like take the deep dive. You might as well, like go in and discover what happens. Like we don't have to do it slow and painful like I did it, right? Like you could do it differently.
That is very true. I think a lot of people also underestimate themselves. They do fear trying the hardest, you're trying to be exactly what they want to be right away. And that is such a good point to bring up. I appreciate that. Something I've heard you speak on is intensity. And I think a lot of people hate that intensity, being labeled an intense person, but I love my intensity. And I've heard you speak on how it can be such a great thing. I would love for you to share a little bit about the benefits of intensity.
Hmm. I mean, I love intensity and I love working with women who uh, are intense, whether they own it or not, but they are, because you cannot ignore it. It is not a force that you can ignore. So there are some people that live very happy lives in the little, go to work and come home and do this thing and patterns and, repeat the same habits day in and day out. And they're quite content living that life. And I would die in that life, right? Like I was dying in that life because that's not what I'm here to experience. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with a Kabbalion, but it's like when the pendulum swings, right? If it swings in this direction, well, then it's going to swing in this direction. And depending on how far it swings in one direction, it's going to swing in the other. So I experience immense, deep pain, and I experience immense, deep joy, right? So I oscillate in deeper and further experiences of both because that's how my state of being is, right? And I give myself permission to go to wherever it is that I'm going, right? I cannot stop it. And so sometimes it's really bizarre and sometimes it's really like, my God, like what's going on here? Like a child is present or something, but that I'm okay with that, right? Like I'm okay with whatever it is because that's the truth of my moment. And I know when that moment is integrated and when that information moves through my body, I'm going to be on the other side of that and experience even deeper joy is the word that comes to mind, really, because I really have that deep connection to the state of being that is joy that most women are not familiar with. But what is joy then, right? It's a fire expression. And fire is the element that most women are terrified of. And it's our domain. Fire is the feminine domain, I believe, anyway, right? So, in our connection to that fire and knowing how to navigate it and how to direct it, right? So when you know how to direct your fire, then you can experience your intensity and not be afraid of it.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so, has your expression of your intensity changed over time into
Mm,
a way that feels better to you?
yeah, absolutely. I used to be enraged. Like I was like a very, man, enraged person. I pursued social justice. So my master's is in criminology and looking at systemic issues that affected women in a plethora of different ways. I've worked in rape crisis centers. I have worked in shelters. I have worked in, particularly with domestic violence. Like that was so important to me, given my background and how I'd grown up. And ironically, as one does, I was in an abusive relationship while I was seeking to change the world out there. So, a lot of anger and deep seated rage at the kind of life that we're collectively creating. Like, I could see a different path. I could see the systemic issues that were impacting. And, I called it patriarchy and capitalism and, like all the things, but I was the one sustaining it. And when I realized that my own bracing against all of this, my own fighting all of this was actually sustaining it in place, right? My activism was sustaining it in place. Oh man, was that a mind fuck? Because now I have to awaken to the reality that it's me. It is me. When I discover, and man, this was a process, right? Like it was an awesome, incredible process that led me to where I am today. But when I discovered that my fire is mine and I'm gonna covet it and I'm gonna nourish it and I'm gonna feed it and I'm gonna listen to it and I'm going to let it burn the old and transform my body so that I am deeply attuned to what I know that I know and I don't become a victim to someone else's story. Everything changed because now I can look at the bigger picture and I can see, yes, it's absolutely true that patriarchy is real and capitalism sustains these mindsets in place and all that sort of stuff. That continues to remain true, but I'm not fighting it anymore. I have discovered that I can create a different reality. That's what I use my fire for. I use that fire and intensity to create a different reality. So I have conversations with women because I believe that women in conversation transform the world. It's like that ripple effect, right? Like if you awaken to a different reality, you now have contact with a series of women, like for example, through this podcast, right? Your voice spreads further and wider, and now you touch the life of somebody else that's seeking that awakening. And then that person awakens, and then as she awakens, in that nanosecond of awakening, life transforms. And so her children become different, right? Like your children are different, and my son is different. And it's like there's a ripple effect. And how many women need to awaken to a different reality for the masses to transform? And I don't know. But I do know that fighting is not going to work. I know that hiding is not going to work. I know that self-loathing is not going to work. I know that believing ourselves deficient is not going to work. And I know that giving in to the conventional narrative is not going to work. So how else might we choose to create a reality, right? Because we are creators. If I am quantum, I am the creator. And so that's the responsibility part that so many people want to avoid. They want to put it on someone else, please. I just don't want to. Let mommy and daddy deal with it, right? Like as authority figures, like let the government deal with it and let the medical system deal with it. So that displacement of responsibility is a huge one that we have got to claim and take ownership of, because it's my life, right? It's my life, not theirs. They have their agenda and I have mine. So awakening to that is so massive so that we can actually own the intensity of it, because it's huge. It is huge. Our world does not have to be as it is, and it is.
Right, right. I love that ripple effect idea. I think of that so often. And I see it as like a tree with roots that just spread further and further. You have one root that splits into 5, splits into 10, and it's just incredible thinking about how one action, one moment can really change so much in the world. And yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that one too. I want to share. I also worked at a domestic violence shelter, and so I was really reflecting on my own experiences, and I realized that I was working at the suicide hotline while I was dealing with the worst mental health of my life. The worst mental health of my life. I think I do remember being on calls with certain people and being activated and feeling my own symptoms perk up. And it was really just like focusing on everybody else so I could ignore my own truth, that really that desire that my own mind and body needed something from me. And it wasn't until I left and really went inward, went into myself, and I didn't have a job at the time, was just all me. And that's when things really changed. And that just really resonated with me on a deep level.
I think your experience is quite common. So when we, and you know, particularly for women and firstborn women into a family, so there's patterns that we're all taught. And this is the empowering thing when you discover that your life is, oh man, this is going to sound harsh, but predictable, right? It's predictable because there are processes in place that when we're focused in our own content, we don't notice the process. And so it really is about awakening to the processes that we're engaging in order to discover the choices that we're making and how they lead to that life. So, you know, for people, I did the exact same thing, right? Like I worked at a suicide hotline at a time when I was deeply suicidal. And so how could I possibly be of assistance when I'm not facing my own internal states, right? So I get it. I get it, the need to save, right? To save somebody from themselves when what we're really looking for is to save ourselves.
Ooh, yeah. It is the mentality of I can't save myself, but maybe I can do it for somebody else. And I agree. I think that is a predictable life. But I also think after a moment, that's not so harsh, honestly, because you're not alone. I think a lot of people feel very alone in these kind of struggles. And like, no, so
Hmm.
many people are out here going through the exact same thing. And we just don't talk about it. It's just
Hmm.
not said.
Hmm. And it's that not talking about it that continues to sustain it in place, right? It's that
Absolutely.
not talking about it. You hide your secrets, you hide your shame, you hold on to it very tightly with a death grip, or else something might happen where what's going to happen is you will be free. So,
And so, if there was a person out there, to anyone who's listening, struggling with maybe a chronic physical, mental, emotional dysregulation, what what would you recommend their first step be? Just like number one step toward finding their inner divinity, their inner peace. What would you recommend?
for me, it's like first step would be reach out, explore, and reach out to somebody that you connect with, right, on a vibrational level, whose experience is other than the status quo. So, and I can refer you to podcasts, and I can refer you to models, and I can refer you to my, free online course. There's so many different things that I can refer you to, but the point is that you allow your own internal cues to lead you to the next person that's going to help you discover how else you can interpret what's going on inside of you.
Beautiful.
So if there is a process in place that you came to be who you are, right? And your body is giving you information, because in a quantum world, your body, that's the only thing it's seeking to do, is give you information. The question now becomes, how do you discover a different way to decode that information? And when there is a structure of thought, when there is a logical way to interpret what's going on in your body, where it's happening, how you experience that makes a huge difference and tells a story. So if you want to decode the story, if you want to know the story of your body so that you can take ownership of that and then redirect and make different choices, then the next step is you listen to your body and you connect with the people that you vibrationally connect with. Yeah.
I think that's almost always my recommendation. Find
Mm.
somebody. Find somebody who wants you to find you.
That's good. Oh, that's good.
I
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
And I think to wrap up, we will just go into the question I love to ask everybody. If you could choose any legacy to leave behind, what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Mm. I love that question. So I am really fortunate because I am living my legacy. And it's like, how many people get to experience that? How many people get to
Right.
say that? And on a continuous, constant basis, I tell my husband, if I die tomorrow, I would be good. And I'm not ready, right? Like I'm not ready to go. Otherwise I would. But I'm not ready because there's so much more. There's so much more for me to experience. So the legacy that I am intentionally leaving behind is deep connection to oneself. So I live my life from that, and I help other, mostly women, connect to that. And I model to my son how to live like that. And so that is my legacy. My legacy is deep intimacy with my own self, and that awakening that, you know, I get to live my meaningful life in the midst of the chaos. I get to live my meaningful life in the midst of what everybody else is experiencing as, it's like I get this visual of a chicken running with its head cut off, right? And I can see that, and I'm not engaging that. So my legacy is depth and connection and intimacy and exploration of deeper places and spaces. And that's what I'm here for.
Beautiful. Incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for reaching out. I am so happy. This has been a wonderful conversation. Would you share with everyone where they can find you and also about the resources on your website? Because those are fantastic.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity to do that. I appreciate that. So I can be found at sparkingthesacred.com. That is my home on the internet. I don't use Facebook and Instagram. I also use Telegram because it's a far more intimate connection. But you can find me through my website, and you can see what I offer there. And you can also see the free resources, and I'm continuously building upon them. The one that I would recommend to everybody that would be curious about this, but not quite sure what to do next, I have an 8-day multidisciplinary email course that you can subscribe to, and you will get an email every day that has a written component, an audio component, and at the end of it, we'll have a journaling component for over 40 minutes. And the invitation is that you sit and you answer those questions and you apply the 6 fundamentals of transformation that I share with you throughout. And if that course is meaningful to you, then you can connect with me and book a 30-minute exploration and then see where it takes us. So that's where I can be found. And that's, that's my home on the internet. Yeah.
Thank you so much again. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I did too. This is so wonderful. I love being here and chatting about all this stuff because it's so meaningful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I truly enjoyed this conversation and connection, and I hope you did too. If you want to take advantage of Stela's free resources she's graciously offered, they are down in the description. And all of my information is down there too. Remember to follow and subscribe to see more of this kind of content. And if you're interested in any of my free offers or my coaching opportunities or anything else, everything is down in the description. Remember, be well, be kind, and may your curiosity for this world and the next never fade.